I'm live. Okay, I think I need to clean the screen on this baby too. Should have done this before. Might have just been the, let's see if that helps. Nothing like that to welcome you in. I feel like I have a little bit of hair or something there. All right, so live on YouTube, live on Substack, trying this out just to see if I can do both. If you've seen any of my messages, especially on TikTok, if you're coming from TikTok, you know that I really wanted to make sure that I own my content, that it's not just on YouTube or TikTok or Instagram, but that it's actually owned by me. And that's why I want to have it over there on Substack. So there's, as far as I can tell, if you are joining me, go ahead and put your name in the chat box so I know that you are a live person and really with me. Otherwise, I'm just going to jump into what I had outlined for myself today, and kind of give us a few minutes here just to get going. I'm going to talk about, I don't think there's anybody here yet. So why am I going live? If you're watching this in the replay, thank you. Make sure you definitely hit that subscribe button, that like button, that'll push this out to more people. If you're on Substack, it takes a little bit more work. You actually have to share this to your community, whether it be on any of the other social media platforms. But I don't know, I did lives a couple times in my other renditions of my YouTube channel and really just loved the in the moment talking with myself and pretending I'm talking to you, because eventually some people do watch these videos. Eventually, I would love to, once I hit 500 subscribers and then again 1,000. So for those of you that don't know, my strategy so far has been I want to keep everything free, because this content, this education is change tools in the making. And we desperately, desperately, desperately need this education. We really need people to get their hands on this information. My algorithms, I will be honest, on Facebook and Instagram suck. I do a little bit better on TikTok. I do a lot better on TikTok, but things have shifted since the taking away of TikTok and the back on. I'm seeing that it doesn't do quite as well. And a lot of people are seeing a lot of different changes on that. Hello. Thanks for joining us, Lee. Anyways, Lee, I don't know if you had a chance to watch any of the other information that I put out yet, but if you have questions, let me know. I'm also down here primarily on YouTube, but I will definitely be back and forth. But yes, as the channel grows on YouTube, sorry, I was talking about just my strategy. I really want to keep everything free as much as possible. I've kept Substack very low. If you do want to support it, it's $5 a month. I get about $4 after all the fees from that. But this is, I want to make sure that I own that content over on Substack. But YouTube definitely has a better reach as far as I know right now. And in order to get monetized on YouTube, it is quite a bit of work. You have to get 1,000 subscribers and you have to hit 4,000 hours of watch time. So if you are liking my videos, please make sure you're watching them all the way to the end. That also tells the algorithm a lot. And watch them again and again if you can, especially some of these newer ones coming out are going to be super, super meaty, super deep. Notes will be good. And yeah, send them to your friends and let people know that we're here. The point of my work is not to reiterate a lot of the other work, a lot of the other non-mainstream social media news outlets that people might have been finding. I think that's how Lee, part of me, found me. We were talking over on Robert's today. Robert, what is his name? Robert Reichs today. I don't want to, you can go other places and really find that information. I want to be much more forward focused in the sense of how do we take care of our bodies and our souls and our energy during this time, and keep our minds being able to think straight and not get caught up in all the chaos that everybody else is just, as I heard the news about Pete, I always say his name wrong, Pete Hegseth getting confirmed last night. I ran to social media to try to see if other people were saying anything. And then I got online this morning and there's really not any new information, but as I was going to all these different channels, people are just reiterating the same thing that the other channels are reiterating. And it's honestly like, I know, in psychology, we've got to tell a story over and over and over again to kind of help discharge that energy and try to make sense of it. So there is a healthy place to do that. However, we also need to not be putting fuel on the fire for other people, but also for ourselves. So yeah, staying sane and balanced, it's going to be so critically, it's just so critical to the work that I want to help do. The work, I'm going to talk more over here to Substack because more people are joining over in Substack. But the work that I'm bringing forth is really helping to peel back the layers of this patriarchal lens that we don't even know we're looking at the world through. Like, we understand we're in patriarchy, but we don't understand the ideology that has built us into this patriarchal lens, that we're looking at everything through. So, hi, Marianne, like through the femtech world, as I'm reading some of your articles, I definitely want to talk to you more because I'm seeing it still. I have questions. I don't want to assume anything, but I just want to make sure that we're looking at it from a non-patriarchal lens, from a non-capitalistic lens, and we're really helping ourselves to understand how to look back at the past through this non-patriarchal lens. Well, how to understand that we are generally looking back at the past through the patriarchal lens, but then how to shift and change that to a different lens so we can rewrite the past, be able to rewrite the present, and hopefully into the future. Now, I don't know, say more about that lens. So Lee, that lens is the whole first video that I just released on Substack and YouTube yesterday. It is a 30 to 33-minute video, and I go deeply into the creation of patriarchy and the 10 steps that she outlines in her introduction, which then form each of the chapters in her book, about how it took 2,500 years to get into the ideology that built patriarchy, and this started the patriarchal lens that I'm talking about. So it's not so much the events that happened, but the ideology that drove those events. And I'm sorry, I don't know why this is not, and this is so weird, like, not, I think I'm used to having Zoom and being able to have the interaction on Zoom. But that lens is so important for us to understand. And so, like, the first step started at 3100 BCE, and that was with men and women both learning to control the woman's womb. And that's why it's so foundational. Let's see, my internet connection is unstable, so hopefully you guys can still see me. Thank you. So that lens of being able to understand that first step alone is saying that patriarchy has the right to control other people's bodies and other but people's autonomy. That's the foundation of patriarchy, and we're seeing that played out through women's health, through people not being able to say whatever gender they are, through marriages. I would say, even, I know it's not popular, but even through mandated vaccines. Yes, I understand that there needs to be things that we do as a collective to keep our health straight, but we cannot, because that's part of patriarchy, mandate other people to do things with their body. So that's just where I land. If you want to know more, please go watch that video. It has everything in there about those 10 steps. But then the 13 video series for this season is going to really be peeling back the layers of trying to understand history and how really it's a mirage. It's not really something that we can rely on, especially the history that we've been taught. And then also understanding myths and the power that myths and how they intermingle with history in a way that we are believing history, which is actually really myth, and myths, which are really, well, myths. History is more myth than we think. And how, especially through the evangelical Christian church, that has evolved through the Bible. I mean, so much of our Western foundation is really built on the Genesis story of creation. And so I'm diving deeply into that in this 13-week series. And I really, want to use these lives once we get going to be more of a question and answer for those. I'm just trying to figure out the best time to release those videos. If it's Friday, I don't know. Wednesday night, maybe Wednesday nights for our live. So for those of you that watch this later, please let me know which ones would work better for you, and I'll pull people. Let's see. I think most people on the left agreed that women are entitled to bodily autonomy. What I'm curious about is how people who do understand what the patriarchy is and how it affects us still view events through the lens of patriarchy. Can you elaborate? So again, really, that's going to be the work of the videos. And I think in order to understand, it's not something I can just go into quickly here. And that's why I outlined the 13 videos the way I did. And I'm releasing them once a week so that we have that foundational information system together. So then we can talk about this type of a question. Does that make sense? I want to make sure and how it affects us are still viewing. Yeah. So that I do start to get into that like in video 3. And then in video 4, I talk about what deconstruction actually is and defining it, because I think there's a lot of confusion around that. And then video 5, I jump into explaining more about history. So there's really a lot of layers I have to build, Lee, for us to actually be able to answer that question. So I know that's probably frustrating. You want a quick and easy answer, but it's even as I've been putting these videos together, it's not been quick and easy for me to pull this information together, make sense of it, and help people put it together in such a way that I can, teach it and get it out for people. Okay, great. So that makes sense. But yeah, keep the questions coming. I love it because this helps me, and it helps me know that what I'm doing is actually on track and going to help people in the way that I hope it helps people. So yeah, so look forward to that. Definitely subscribe on YouTube. So let me back up again. My financial way that I'm doing this is really, yeah. So again, Lee, you haven't missed too much. I released a trailer. I released week 1. So for this series, I've released some other videos, but I really didn't know exactly, like I'm still been on YouTube for quite a while, newer to Substack. I released some posts on Substack in September that were dealing with this creation of patriarchy. So that would also help you. But didn't really understand what I was doing actually until probably early December when I engaged with a course on how to design my YouTube channel. And that really helped me streamline the idea of creating a season, putting the videos together in a way that could really build this idea so that we would have a foundational toolbox, if you will, to be able to have this conversation. But that's what I kept finding as I am watching the news, as I'm watching historians, as I'm watching, like, especially like biblical historians, not biblical theology, but biblical historians, as I'm watching a lot of the feminine work, is that people are still going into this work through not understanding the creation of patriarchy and how patriarchy isn't all there used to be. So I point this out in the first video. How did I get into the topic of deconstructing patriarchy? Okay, I can talk about that too. So we're going off tangent, which is great. I love it. I had some other things I wanted to get through today, but I do definitely want to do some of the somatic tools and get into that because that's something I want to bring into all of this. So where was I before I read your Miriam's talking about, patriarchy has only been around for, so the start of patriarchy was 6,000 years ago. Hello, I got somebody on YouTube. Please let me know who you are and how you found us. I'm also on Substack, so I'm going back and forth and talking with both and reading comments from both. So patriarchy started 6,000 years ago. It took about 2,500 years to anchor itself in as the primary social structure of the state. And it did it through the state first and then into religion. That's really important to know. And when you look back, I did the math, Homo sapiens have been around about 300,000 years. So really patriarchy, if you take, somewhere between 3,500 years and 6,000 years, it's only been 1.1 to 2% of our time on this earth. And people, there's a lot of good evidence. Again, we don't know anything for sure from the past. Even our history, and we'll get into that in video 4, 5, 6, 7. History is really more of a mirage. We don't, like, people taught us that it's 100% fact, but it's not necessarily 100% fact. We don't know exactly what happened in the past. And most of the past was written by victors, and it was only, a certain upper echelon that gave us their information. Most of the history of the world is lost to us. But there is good evidence that we lived in partnership societies that were more matrilineal and matrifocal, meaning the power didn't go down through the female line, but the structure of the family and the tribe went down through the family line, and then they shared the equal with equal librium, the social and political and physical needs of the tribe together. So I go into that again in first video, and I'll keep going into that more. But partnership societies is really what I am putting forth as something that we need to look at doing. How I got into the topic of deconstructing patriarchy is a long road. And again, that's going to be part of the 13-point series. The last I think the second to last two videos, I do go into what we would call my testimony. That's a word from the evangelical world, but I will talk about how I got saved in the first place and why I was primed as a person living in the Midwest, not ever going to church, but really being indoctrinated by the myths of the Western American culture. And that made me prime for becoming an evangelical. And then how I got out of that was really learning about the gender roles and the reason gender roles, especially within the evangelical church, lead to a lot of domestic violence and domestic abuse and all of those things. And then that trickled down to me really waking up to learn that much of what I will be doing in this first season is helping to unpack our language and that ideology behind the structure of our society through our myths that we have believed. And hold on just a second. So believing that there was only one male God, I started reading this book, The Dance of a Dissident Daughter by Sue Monk Kidd. She wrote The Secret Life of Bees, which is her, movie. She got turned into a movie. And The Dance of a Dissident Daughter, if you don't know it, it was about her feminine awakening within the Southern Baptist Church. And in the early parts of her book, she starts talking about how she uses the feminine divine and starts using that in her language and how uncomfortable it was. So I'd been on this process of deconstructing gender roles, still deeply within the Christian patriarchal church, but I find this book, and that book actually led me, I did that actually, it led me to trying to talk about the divine, about God in a more feminine, and that felt really uncomfortable, but I felt like there was something to it, and it just gave me permission. And then it led me to this book, The Creation of Patriarchy, and it was Labor Day weekend. I was sitting in my apartment out in California. I had a broken right foot. The kids were with their dad. I was newly divorced. Reading the introduction, and I read that first step of The Creation of Patriarchy, which was controlling a woman's womb. And I just was like, hell no. My sexuality and my body is mine. It is nobody else's. I am done giving it to some male god that doesn't even feel like he exists anymore. I'm done giving it to some husband that doesn't, put my needs and my safety and my financial means on equal par with his, that is out to get me. And I'm done giving it, saving it now, because now I was divorced, for some external man that I might eventually meet again. No. My sexuality was mine. Like, I literally bent down and picked up the deed to my sexuality and said, I am freaking done with that. So that really launched me into going deeper into the creation of patriarchy and understanding it and working with its ideologies and its principles for the last 14 or 15 years. And then initially I was called The Dance of the Sacred Profane here on Substack and on YouTube. But really felt like that was a little too ethereal. It felt too far for people to really understand what was happening. So I made it more concrete with deconstructing patriarchy. So that's the short of it. I'll get into more of it in, I think, video 11 once I get that filmed. So that really helps. All right. So that's a quick introduction into all of this. Just so you know, once I hit 500 subscribers on YouTube, I'm going to do something special. I think, it gives me permissions to allow people to actually pay a little bit of money and then have a little bit more access to me. And I think that that's going to be good. I'm considering something with that with Substack as well, just because I know as I grow and being at this stage as a perimenopausal finding out I'm ADHD and autistic, like my bandwidth as a single person here, I'm only me operating all of this and have so much work I want to put out. I just want to make sure that I'm not inundating myself with too many. Like I don't want to go viral too fast. Like I've learned that. So I feel like that checks and balances would really help me. But then once I hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube and start making some money, I'm really hoping, like Miriam, I know you're one of the women I'd love to have on and do a live here on YouTube in order to interview you and how you got into the work you're doing. Bonnie is another woman that I know we both know who does a lot of work, Own Your Ambition, over on Substack. And there's also just friends that I think are brilliant in my life that I've run across that have brilliant ideas for women to really be listening to. And I want to bring in everyday common women because that's me. Like I know my girlfriend and I are always talking about like, where's the everyday common women in the podcast / live world, like it's great listening to these other people that have reached like these huge milestones in their lives. And there's, somewhat of this, you have to reach those milestones in order to hear from them. But I also want to hear from people like me, right? So I really want to bring in a lot of everyday women just doing the work in their lives, and men, I don't want to exclude men or people identifying as women, whatever their identification is. I want to bring those everyday people in. So I'm really looking forward to doing that. All right, so let's move on to a little bit of our self-care part of this. I was hoping to do it a little earlier to really jump all of this off, but I love your questions over on Substack. So a little bit more of my background you'll get as you start interacting with me more is I always loved psychology and behavioral change management and understanding people and body language and all of that. Decided not to go get my therapist license because I just never wanted to sit in an office all day. That's just not me. I want to be out and moving. So I ended up getting an NLP, which I'm very skeptical about that word anymore, which is neuro-linguistic programming. Thanks, Lee. I hope you can join us later. Not a problem. And yeah, I'm going to still talk whether people are here or not. If you have to go, Marianne, I totally understand. I'll just keep talking. I have a little agenda for myself. And this will be up on both places that people can rewatch later. And let me know if Wednesday nights, like Wednesday evenings, would be better for a live in order to do the Q&A for the last week's lesson. So maybe posting the Friday lesson and then doing a Q&A for it that following Wednesday. Okay, so yes, so I have a somatic, body language, life coaching. I don't really like to use the word life coaching anymore because it has so much self-help toxic understanding behind it. I was a personal trainer for a while as well. So I really like to blend all of that into the work that I do, even though I do a lot of this intellectual work, and remind us, as my voice starts to go, that we're in the body, right? Like we have to be in the body. And in order to combat the chaos, and here's that patriarchal lens that I meant to mention this earlier in the video, but the patriarchal lens right now, I want to really point out, and they're doing a really good job, is creating chaos. They're doing a lot of these quick actions, executive orders, going through the court system. ICE is out doing raids. We're hearing a lot of stuff. I think it's going to be super important for us to take a moment and breathe, do the somatic tool that I'm going to teach you here for a second, and do some fact checking. We can't rely on fact checkers anymore, obviously. Like something came out about Chicago schools yesterday. And so I ran and talked to a girlfriend who's from, the area. Like I grew up around Chicago, and try to get some fact checking done before we run into reposting those videos, and also throwing turbine onto a fire that's already going. Because when they can create that fire and keep us fanning that flame over and over and over again, then we aren't going to be able to get out of our fight or flight, freeze or fawn or whatever mode in our brain. And we're going to stay in that chaos. We're not going to know. We're going to feel alone. This is what I'm hearing all throughout the internet. We're feeling alone. We don't know what to do next. We need people to organize us. yes and no. Like I want to, if I'm looking through that patriarchal lens, we kind of want to stay out of wanting a savior. That's what the patriarchal lens really wants us to remember is that we can't do it on our own and that we need a savior. So we need to pick up that savior flag for ourselves and do the work ourselves. And a lot of that is learning the education that I'm putting out. Again, a lot of selfless plugs, I know, but I believe so deeply that this is a huge piece of the puzzle that we all need to learn this language and how to look through the lens of a patriarchal lens to see society so we can remove that lens and not get caught up in their chaos. So I wrote this down. Right now the new administration wants to create chaos and upheaval so that they can intimidate us, so that they can cause disunity, a lot of infighting, and more confusion so that we'll be easier controlled. And so how do we combat that? Well, we first start with our own somatic nervous system. So I'm going to do something that I might have to adjust the videos a little bit. So this is called the somatic shake. Peter Levine really pioneered the work around the somatic. If you don't know somatic work, it is about the body. Somatic just means of the body. So it's he looked at how how animals out in nature would shake off trauma. And even our dogs do this. They'll come, wake up from a dream and they're just shaking it. And he did the research and found that that helps to actually discharge the energy and reset the nervous system to zero. So if you're not doing that, this is how I always explain this in all of my, when I used to lead ecstatic dance spaces and talk about energy management and how to understand energy systems. We have all of this energy, all of, car alarms, the ambulances, the phones, the TV, the radio. Well, not so much the radio anymore, but you know what I mean? We have all of this different energy feedback coming into our nervous systems all the time. And we're just taught to sit with it. And it's like he takes a slinky, Peter Levine takes a slinky, and a slinky, when it's original, it goes like this. It opens and expands, and then it contracts back to its original shape. But when you have all of this external energy pushing itself onto the slinky starts to do this, and it gets out of whack, and it no longer can go down the stairs like a slinky should. This is what's happening to our nervous system. And especially, if we think of our spine as that nervous system, we're not able to really be able to adapt or use that energy in an efficient way. So really, limiting how much of that energy is coming in is going to be so vitally important. If you're just listening to the same thing over and over and over again, I would say, please take a moment, breathe, maybe turn it off. Find something that's a little bit more proactive, and then get up and do this exercise called the somatic shake. So if you have shoes on, I'm going to invite you to take those shoes off, and then I'm going to adjust the camera so you all can see me as I explain this somatic shake. All right. So let's see here. Come on, phone. I'm going to take a drink of water. So I have my yoga mat out just to make it a little bit better on my joints. If you have any back injuries or knee injuries or any joint injuries, really, please take care. Please watch this full expose. And I can see already that if you want to see the fullness of this exercise, please go to Substack's live repeat, because that's going to be a lot better to see the full thing. You can't see what I'm doing down here over on YouTube, but you're going to just let your body kind of hang. And the movement is, you want the heels to come up and drop down, come up and drop down. And what this is going to do is going to shimmy the energy up the spine and help to start release energy within the spine and energy within the body. And then you're just going to kind of let your arms go spaghetti, and eventually your head go to spaghetti when you feel better. And I meant to have a timer. Since I can't have a timer on there, let me see if I can find a timer on here. And we're just going to do, let's see. I cannot find a timer on my application. All right, I'm just going to have to do it freehand here. But you're basically, maybe start with 10 to 15 seconds at first, working your way up in gradual 10, 15-second increments to a minute. I will not be able to do it on here because I'll get flagged for music, but I love putting tribal beat type music on here with a lot of drumming and then doing this exercise to the drum. So let me show you the exercise first before you join me. But again, you want to be barefoot or no shoes on, maybe on something that's a little bit more cushioned. I'm going to turn around so you can see my feet. And again, you're going to be able to do this much better on Substack. But I'm just raising up on my toes and then I'm coming down on my heels. And I do that really quick. And you'll start to see the shakes that's going through my body. And I let my arms go and I let my head go, just so my body is supported. Hopefully you all can still hear me. And I just keep doing that, seeing where it goes, going off the tracks. And then I come to a stop. And you're just going to feel all the spaciousness inside of you start to open up. I would teach this at the ecstatic dance spaces I would host over in Nashville. And we would do this at the beginning of the teaching Sundays where I used to do this. And I kid you not, after doing an hour of these type of, not just this exercise, but after doing an hour, hour and a half of these type of somatic exercises, you walk out feeling as if you are in an altered state. You don't have to move fast. You don't have to move furiously. You don't have to take drugs or alcohol to get into an altered state. You just need to know how to move energy in your body. So we're going to do this again. We're going to start in 5 seconds. But I just want you to get your knees soft. Your knees stay soft. And you're just making sure that the energy is driving downwards into the heels. And if I'm doing this on YouTube and Substack Live, you can certainly do this by yourself at home. But just let it shake. Join me when you're ready. We're going to go for 10, 9, 8, 7. You can even get a lion's breath in there if you want. 6, 5. See if you can get a little bit more shaking going on. Just imagine your dog waking up from a nap. Your cat. 3, 2. Come to complete stillness. Just allow the energy to reset itself. Allow the shoulders to drop down the back into their shoulder blades. Swaying front to back, side to side. Any of that's okay. So I'm going to stop there, but imagine working your way up to a minute of that and how powerful you'll feel. If you want to leave me a comment or two of how you feel after doing that exercise, please do so. And then please take that into the week with you. And maybe finishing with a self-hug. Sorry, my inner chest muscle is a little tight. But yeah, finishing with a self-hug. You're just joining us. We just did a little bit of a somatic exercise to help release some anxiety and nerves and reset the nervous system. You can go back and watch this replay to understand what this is doing on the inside for you, and then learn the practice of actually doing it. If I didn't do a good enough job describing it, if you still have questions, of course, let me know. But it's going to be, I know I have some people that are with me that weren't with me before we started this. So thank you for joining us. And for those on Substack, I'm also on YouTube, so I'm talking with both places here. But I was just saying before all of this that I'm not a place where I'm going to be doing a recap of all of the political news from the week. At this point, I feel like we know shit is going to hit the fan. We know it's going to be drastic. It's, you know, I kind of took a wait and see approach earlier on. After the election, I got really upset. And then I was like, you know what? Let's wait and see how bad it's going to get. And it's not looking great, especially if you haven't heard, Pete Hegseth did get confirmed as the Secretary of Defense. And I could say a lot about that. But I want to be a place where helps people really understand the ideology that is 6,000 years in the making that got us here, and why we want to understand that, why it's so applicable to understand what I keep talking about as a patriarchal lens, and how we can deconstruct patriarchy and deconstruct that patriarchal lens. And in order to do that, I've developed these 13-week series that will be over on Substack and here on YouTube. Um, but I had a great question that kicked off the Substack, at least, asking me to speak more about the patriarchal lens. But I can't really do that until people have the language and understanding and the history through this book that I talk about in that series. The series just got started yesterday with the first episode, and will go for 13 weeks. I'm still trying to figure out the best way to really work with this and be active with this ideology and helping people understand it. So I want to do the lives maybe on Wednesday evenings and release the next lesson on Friday, but I'm looking for people's feedback too to see what days work best for lives. And again, everybody can watch the lives on their own time, but it's also nice to be together and just feel the energetic hugs. And I wish we could do it more on a Zoom so I could have other faces and not just see mine all the time. I'm gonna take a drink of water. Hold on just a sec. So yeah, so really helping people understand the patriarchal lens so that we can look back at the past and see how wrong a lot of the past is that we're believing in as actual facts, and it's actually more myths, and how those myths make this invisible structure of patriarchy around us that we're just swimming in, and not we understand we swim in patriarchy, but we don't understand the ideology and how it's programmed our cultural DNA through stories and myths. So I'm hoping to make that visible to people so that we can take it off, look back at the past, see a different possibility of the past, which will help us rewrite the future, or sorry, rewrite the present and also the future. And part of my work is also doing a historical fiction novel series to show what I mean by all of this. So my first historical fiction series is working title The Sacred Tryst, and it's taking a lot of the stuff that I've learned through the creation of patriarchy, but also about Inanna and Ashtera and the wider pantheon of the Jewish culture of gods, and all of this ideology, and flipping the idea of Christ on its head to give back women the power of the Christ, and still following along with the Jesus story because it's going to fit into how we see the world today. But that's what I mean is like, is there a different way we could see the past and rewrite our stories, especially those creation stories, so that we're still here today, right? We can't change the past, but we can change how we see it, which is going to change how we actually show up in the present and how we move forward into the future. So hopefully that makes sense. Let me know. A few other things I wanted to invite you in for self-care though. So yeah, so this is not to do all that shit that other people are doing, which is important. I don't want to be continually throwing turbine on the fires that are going. I want us to be a place where we can really slow down together, learn some somatic tools, learn some breathing techniques, and still talk about this deep stuff that we need to talk about. I do have an e-course over on Thinkific. I have a link over on YouTube under this live to get there. It is also just deconstructing patriarchy.thinkific.com. And that e-course is like $15, and it goes more into the somatic shake and some other somatic tools that you might find helpful during this next part of our lives forever. I also started years ago, I think it was maybe right after COVID or during COVID, trying to do something similar to what, if you know, yoga with Adrienne, which she does, her at-home yoga practice through YouTube, and then her Find What Feels Good community that you can be part of off of YouTube. Excuse me. I did an at-home dance practice for a few months, and so you can go and just feel like you have somebody, you have a sister doing a free-form dance movement practice with. And I think I always teach like a somatic example of something that we can work with that week. And those are like, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 minutes. So just little movement exercises you can do. So you can go and join that. But yeah, I'm just going to reiterate like how to stay sane in this time when we have all of this information coming at us, and again, I think that's very orchestrated by the administration, as if they can keep us in the state of chaos and confusion and disunity and not knowing what to do because there's all of this bad information coming at us. It makes us more easily controllable. So setting a time limit for ourselves, really, I would say, and take it for what it's worth, staying off of mainstream media channels. They are, especially, they don't understand Christian nationalism the way that those of us that have lived that experience understand it. They aren't speaking up against it strongly enough. And I do not want to create sensationalism. At the same time, there's this balance of how much attention do we need to pay attention to this right now so that we can take action? And how do we stay in that same space, right? But those of us that have lived in Christian nationalist environments, we're taking it seriously because it's something to be taken seriously. I don't know how else to say that. So I do want to help. So the work that I'm doing will eventually get towards our modern day era of understanding Christian nationalism. But again, I think people that are starting with Christian nationalism, they're great. Like Christy Burke, highly suggest that you go watch her series over on YouTube. The new evangelicals, they're actually still evangelical Christians. They would, well, I don't know if they call themselves evangelicals anymore after the election, but they still hold to the Bible and the virgin birth and all that stuff. Christy Burke and I do not. But they're doing great work. And I do highly suggest following them and getting an understanding of what's happening within the Christian nationalist movement. But I think that's starting too late. We need to understand how patriarchy got started and embedded in the ideology that allowed the Crusades, that allowed all of the religious wars to happen, because this is no different. Christian nationalism and what we're seeing overtake our government right now is no different than any of this other stuff. And that's why I'm so passionate about going all the way back to deconstructing patriarchy, not just my Christian faith, not just my self-help faith or self-help world, but the actual patriarchy. And so that's what I'm hoping to do. All right, so some other people I wanted to suggest that I think are doing some good work in the space that you might want to jot down. Again, I'm a little torn because a lot of these people do come out pretty heavily Democratic. And because of the lens, I keep talking about that patriarchal lens, these people, that's all they can see. It's either, the Republican Party is completely gone now, which it is. It's a Donald Trump party, or the Democratic Party. And I want us to think outside of all of that. But we have to know we have that patriarchal lens on first and realize it's limiting our view from being able to see any other options, any other creative options. We have to take it off and be able to get outside of that and create something new. So even though some of these people I think are valid to follow, just know that some of these other names I'm going to mention are still looking at the world through patriarchal lens. And I think by the end of this series, you're going to have a deeper understanding of why even what they're preaching might not be what we actually need. So Denise Conroy, I just found her this morning on TikTok. She actually does a lot of actionable steps, which I like. How much of them can we take, such as, not shopping at Whole Foods, getting off of Amazon, not going to Target or Walmart, or limiting the amount of times that we actually spend. Like, we need the masses to do that, though. That's the only thing with things like that. So we can talk more about that later. Just going to mention it here. Another person I just found this morning is Robert Reich. He's here on Substack. He's also on YouTube. Again, though, very patriarchal lens, but compassionate patriarchy, I believe. And then Midas Touch. It's sometimes I have a really hard time listening to the Midas Touch. I really do. I'll be honest. The political girl is pretty good, but again, it's very Democratic and very like, go Democrats. We need the Democrats to do this. And I just personally, I don't want to not support the Democrats if that's the only options we have in this next rounds of election, because we have to do something to counter and to oppose what's happening the best we can right now. But I also want to take that longer view and say, we need something outside. We need a partnership society. And I don't know exactly what that looks like yet, but I know building this foundation of how to talk about the patriarchal lens is part of the process to getting us there for that conversation. So hopefully that makes sense and you're staying with me. And then I think, yeah, like we just did with the somatic shake, taking really good care of your physical body and your physical needs and taking breaks. Which is hard because it's sometimes, I mean, with our constant access, it's just like last night I got on at 9 o'clock after I saw on Sharon, the preamble here on Substack, posted that Pete Hegseth, I got it right, Pete Hegseth, have plenty of time to get it right now, got confirmed. And so I did go into a little bit of panic mode. And by 10 o'clock, I finally turned it off and allowed myself just to take care of my body and get some sleep. So okay, my voice is starting to go, and I do need to be also filming the at least one other video for this series today or this weekend. So I'm just going to mention these, and we can talk about them more later. I have the links on YouTube to these things that I'm mentioning, but as part of my goal of helping you find other ways to put your energy into positive directions, that is going to feel like we're taking more action steps than just constantly hearing the negative news. I wanted to bring forth some of the other education that I'm tuning into right now that might help you also understand, especially as we build this patriarchal lens understanding, you'll be able to understand this information that I'm sharing now in a completely new way. Hold on just a sec. Okay, so podcast-wise, Outlawed, spelled exactly like it sounds. And this is, I'm just going to read the about section here. Most people in the US support abortion access, but having nuanced conversations about restrictions and bans can seem impossible. Join two OBGYNs on the front lines of abortion care as they make sense of the ever-evolving consequences of our government ceding the expert decision-making power of medical professionals to lawyers and courts, not the actual people that are trained in this. Each short episode, they're like 25 to 30 minutes long at most, features stories and science from physicians, researchers, abortion seekers, and other expert witnesses to the impact on all of our lives. Whether you're out drinking with the dudes, doing playground duty with other parents, or being stared down by Uncle Bob, we've got your back. So I've listened to a couple of the episodes so far, and here are the things. And also I started this book. I haven't returned to it, but it's called Trust Women, A Progressive Christian's Argument for Reproductive Justice. So reproductive justice is the term we want to be using for this aspect. And the reason this is so important for the work I'm doing is because if you were here with me at the very beginning of this episode, you would hear that the number one fucking step that patriarchy took, didn't know it was taking, right? But the number one step it knew it was taking, didn't know it was taking, because we all co-created this at the beginning, believe it or not, women and men, was to learn how to control a woman's womb. And that this eventually led men, because women were so busy having babies, that's my theory, that they lost the partnership, the equality in their communities that they had. And that's how patriarchy really got started. But that eventually, that step of learning how to control a woman's womb, number one step, embedded and birthed, is that the right word? Embedded into patriarchy's ideology and into the system of patriarchy, the idea it had the right to now control other people and to control their bodies and autonomy. And this is the step that eventually led to slavery. So that is why supporting and understanding the fight for reproductive justice is so important to the work that we're doing here on this channel. Not abortion care, reproductive justice care, because abortion is a very limited part, especially as I'm listening to the series and understanding it more as a woman in her late 40s. I didn't understand this. Reproductive justice covers the entire life of a woman's reproductive, which it goes from birth to grave. And so, okay, so a couple of the stats I wanted to point out that I thought were so important in just the first couple of the podcasts that I've listened to And this blows out of water why the pro-life movement is thinking that this is the type of woman that goes after an abortion. Actually, 6 out of 10 women that seek abortion care are already mothers. They have limited resources, limited time, limited energy, and they want to devote what they have left to the children that are already in existence. And so they seek an abortion. Along that line, 2/3 of women that seek abortion are already below the poverty line. So they don't have the money. We all know how expensive it is right now and how we're like just struggling to survive. Imagine being below the poverty line and now you're looking at another mouth to feed, and you might have to like have 5 kids that are, malnourished instead of just 4 kids that are malnourished. Like those are big decisions that it can't be cut down to a black and white yes or no type of thing. So we really have to look at that. 25% of pregnancies end up in miscarriages. Over 50% of the zygotes that get, or I think they're called blastocysts. So that's an egg that gets sperm in it and becomes, that blastocys doesn't get embedded into the wall of a mother's uterus. So there's a lot of natural abortions already happening. Roe versus Wade didn't go far enough, y'all. Like I am learning that it only actually gave a physician a right to do an abortion and for a woman's right to beg that for that abortion. It didn't actually give the woman the right for an abortion. The abortion had to be agreed to by the physician. And because we are a class system, it did not actually make it readily available to the 2/3 of the population that actually needed it, right? Below the poverty line. Here's one thing that really sparked my ears, and I need to do some research, but doctors cannot tell if a woman is going through a natural abortion, her body just naturally decided to abort the baby. Sorry, I don't know why this is all blurry all of a sudden, or if it was a medically induced abortion. So this is why a lot of women who wanted the pregnancy and are going through just a natural abortion, the body is rejecting the pregnancy for whatever reason, are going into hospitals and not getting treated. I want to go a step further and ask them, would this be the case if I came in as a woman in my perimenopausal years where flooding is popular? It is something that happens to perimenopausal women. Am I going to be able to get treated? Or are they going to look at that and say, well, we don't know if she's actually having a miscarriage, it's flooding, or she induced an abortion? The ethics of it. There's the latest episode, number 8, talks about the bioethics of having to force a woman to be in servitude to a growing fetus that doesn't even have the viability to be in the world yet, alive, up until 5 or plus months, right? So it's so good. Go check it out. Really encourage you to check it out. The other thing I really wanted to point you to is Breaking Down Patriarchy. I don't know if they're on Substack. They're on YouTube. Breaking Down Patriarchy. I'm actually not going to go into because we're already hitting about an hour and my voice is going. But she is doing a great job over there. I was so excited. She uses the book, The Creation of Patriarchy by Gerda Lerner that I keep talking about. She doesn't use it quite as much as I was hoping she would, but it is forming the foundation of some of her work. I do believe she is also still a practicing religious Christian, not an evangelical. Don't take that, but in my experience, that still infuses people's work and the way they are seeing the world, instead of really getting out of that patriarchal lens where there's this patriarchal God above all of us, right? So, but I do really like her work. Her latest episode, I will encourage you, especially if you're a white woman or a woman of color, or identifying as a woman, to check out. But it's talking about why women of color are so exhausted, and why white women are still saying, giving a lot of talk towards why they want to support women, but then actually going to the polls and not supporting women, and voting against their own interest. And I have a lot, I will share it here. I'm not going to get into detail, but I think a lot of this has to do, and I have the stats, I pulled the stats out, yeah, 49% of stay-at-home moms are white. If you think about that, that means 49% of these stay-at-home moms that are white are strapped to the male for their financial income. And then if you know anything about the evangelical world, they're also going to be threatened with the kids and not being able to have access to their kids or losing the relationship, which has happened. I'm 13, 14 years out from being divorced and still not financially on my feet. I would not change anything. I would not have stayed at all in that marriage. But that is something that I think is a little bit more unique to the white woman who we are all trying to understand and who is really getting a lot of our hate right now. And I understand it, but I'm also trying to bring an understanding to other people to help them understand the obstacles that these white women have to physically and intellectually get over in order to open up to actually be a supporter of us and supporter of themselves. And that's not something that's easily overcome. And that's a big conversation. Maybe we'll do a separate live on that, but let me know your thoughts wherever you fall in the spectrum. But that is from my own experience is I just got to a point personally, and I'll share more of this in my own testimony, where money didn't matter to me. I knew if I stayed another month, I would have been entitled to a heck of a lot more money because of what was happening with my ex's career at that point in time. And I decided to not, because my safety and my sanity, the veil had come down for me. And I could not do the cognitive dissonance to stay in the marriage another month in order to make sure I was financially secure. I've never been out on the street. I did have 50% custody of my kids up until 5 years ago, but he eventually got the kids for me. So these are real things that women are having to deal with, and we can't make those decisions for them. We can't make the decisions for them to forego their family, to forego their financial knowledge of where safety in order to make sure that they join our cause. We want them to, obviously, but we also need to have it be an inviting, welcoming environment for them. And right now it's not. We're shaming these white women. And part of me is like, well, rightly so, but I also understand why they're stuck in the way they do. Again, a little plug for season 1, episode 1. In the 10 steps, actually, I'm just going to read this to you. Step number 4 of the 10 steps that it took for patriarchy to embed itself is this: the earliest laws institutionalized and enforced with the full power of the state women's sexual subordination. Women's cooperation in the system was secured by various means: force, economic dependency on the male head of the family, class privileges bestowed upon conforming and dependent women of the upper class, and the artificially created division of women into respectable, i.e., tied to a man, and not respectable men, i.e., not tied to a man or free of all men. This is step number 4. So if you're thinking about the timeline, the start of patriarchy was somewhere around 3100 BCE. This probably started to happen around 2800 BCE and has been going on ever since. We can still see all of this at play right now. So again, I'm not giving a buy or an excuse to these white women who voted against their and their daughters and their sons and everybody's interest, but I'm helping us understand possibly what they don't even understand themselves and why they can't yet make the move to come over and be part of the opposition against what's happening in our world. And it's so important that we understand that. I mean, part of me, and I'm just going to say the quiet part out loud. I'm an orphan. I have not had a lot of the privileges, and I say that knowing I have privileges as a white woman. But at the same time, I've never had a father. I was raised for 9 years by a sick, dying mother. I was tossed around between family members. I ended up with alcoholic drug addicts as guardians. And when it came to college, I had to figure out a way to pay for college myself. When I went to go look for a scholarship, I didn't qualify for any of the scholarships. I bought a book. This was 1995. I bought a huge ass book that big. I mean, it was like 800 pages. And I looked through that book for anything that I would qualify for a scholarship. I was the wrong color. I don't say that, again, to demean my sisters of color or my brothers of color. Not at all. What I'm saying is the white women that have gotten out have had a financial struggle unlike other classes. So here's some other statistics. So 49% of stay-at-home moms were white in 2014 to 2016. In the same years, and this comes from Pew Research, 7% of stay-at-home mothers were Black. At the same time, Black women are more likely to be the primary or sole income earners for their families. And they maintain a higher work hour regardless of the presence or age of their kids. So if I'm just looking at the stats, Black women are in financially better means to be able to stand up to patriarchy than white women are. They haven't had to face the same indoctrination that white women have within the patriarchy that I'm, putting forth through this book that I just read to you, right? So it's this trickle down effect. And white women are not great at supporting and bringing up other white women. I couldn't get a scholarship. Again, I got into an awesome MFA program last September, Antioch University out in California, their MFA program for Master in Fine Arts and Creative Writing, $50,000 to go. Started looking for scholarships. I don't qualify for any of them. I'm not an LGBTQT. I'm not a different color. There are no scholarships out there. And I don't want pity. Oh, the poor white woman. That's not why I'm saying this. I'm trying to bring an awareness to the fact that other white women who are stuck in situations where they don't have the financial means because they have been so ingrained by patriarchy to marry a rich white man. And then that rich white man has all that power to take their kids from them, to take their financial beingness from them, more so than the other women of other classes. And so for us to get out of that system, we are having to let go of those things and finding our way on our own. I have not been able to get gainful employment in corporate America because I was a stay-at-home mom for 13 years. That's another aspect of this. So all of that is building on top of the white woman. And so when it comes down and push comes to shove, she's staying comfortable because it's her financial security, it's her relationship with her kids. And here's my main point, until we on the outside figure out a way to help them deal with those circumstances in a real way, and the court systems are no friends of white women. They are no friends. There's so many stories I can tell you. One woman's battle, you can go look her up. She's doing a lot of work around that. Until we can find a way to help those white women financially, with their kids, with jobs, with a market that's not looking down on them because they've been stay-at-home moms, they're not going to leave the patriarchy. And we need them to, right? We need them to, because they're really the last straw of keeping these white men and these elite men, I want to use elite because they're not all white, from evolving. And I talk about that in my first video. Please go watch that if you have not watched it already. All right. So yes, that's a lot. Was there anything else? Yeah. So I think the last part of this is the other thing that I've been seeing over the zeitgeist is people that have not been in the evangelical Christian world, and unknowingly, like me, part of the Christian nationalist movement. I did not know that that's what I was, but I was. For about 16 years as an adult. I was not raised in that, and I'll share more about that in my testimony in video 11, week 11. I don't think you fully understand the indoctrination and the fear that's embedded in these people, where we're now looking at them, and I do it as well. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so un-Jesus-like. And I'm not a Christian anymore. I don't believe in Jesus. I don't believe that even the pacifist Jesus is the thing. I don't think that's what he was historically, as I do my research. But if we're going to believe in any type of Jesus, I'd rather believe in the pacifist / take care of your friends and your neighbors and the alien type of Jesus. But we're like looking at these people and saying, you're not, how are you professing this very fundamentalist, like anchored, cemented almost, version of Christianity, and yet you're not supporting the poor or the under, privileged, or the gender queer. You're not supporting these people. Like, how is this true? How is this possible? So part of the work I'm doing, I think I said this earlier in a different way, is I'm backing way up 6,000 plus years to understand, fast forward to this modern era, how Christian nationalists came to be. There are quite a many people out there, Christy Burke, Mind Shift, the new evangelicals that are doing the work to kind of show you more of the modern way, which I highly encourage you if you're wondering how in the world these people are calling themselves Christians can do that. Go, especially Christy Burke. She's in the process of doing a Christian nationalist series on YouTube. Go listen to those and you'll get some understanding. But I'm backing that up even more. I'm backing it up and saying, Christianity really, since it got into its heyday in about 312 CE, with Constantine as the start, has always been used this way. It's really been the outliers that have used Christianity in a different way, as more of just a spiritual way to connect to the divine of whatever's out there, of the energy. So I'm hoping, again, that's really where Christianity took over into this more kind of Christian nationalist. It goes way back to that, in my opinion. But it goes even further back with the start of patriarchy, which was about 31,000 BCE. Took about 2,500 years to anchor in. So we've actually only been in patriarchy for about 3,500 years. And I'm helping you understand that process of how it got established, how it's been the framework of our ideology, of our DNA and our myths and our history and our culture, so that we can take it off, look back at history through a different lens, rewrite history, thus rewriting the present and the future. That's the work we're doing here on this channel. And that will help you understand these evangelical Christians a little bit better. So, all right, y'all, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for being with me. I don't know. I kind of like the Zoom idea better because I don't like that it's just me. I get to see people's names, but let me know how you found this. Let me know the replay of how that was. Again, the goal is to publish once a week one of the 13 lessons. And then I think maybe Wednesday night we will have the Q&A for it. So Friday night we'll post the lesson, Q&A on Wednesday night. If something else works better, I don't know, I'll figure out how to do a survey. And sorry, I don't think I have enough people engaging yet to do a survey. So I'll just keep going. And hopefully you'll find the work, spread the work. My algorithms on my social media suck. So I'm really counting on y'all to help spread the word that we are here, that we're doing this work, that we're doing it. It's heavy, but it's hopeful. There's a lot of hope in this. And again, with my historical fiction work, I'm helping you show the process, right? We're learning these lessons, we're going to talk about them, and then eventually this book will come out and you'll see what I mean on how to rewrite the past so that we can rewrite the present and rewrite the future. All right, so much love. Thanks for joining if you were live. Leave a chat with your questions for me, especially go watch season 1, episode 1. Go watch that. Leave your questions for me there and we'll answer them. We'll do this again Wednesday with a real question and answer for that. All right, bye. Sorry, still have some congestion here. Still getting over the flu.